Do not blame yourself in any way for what has happened. You've been a good husband, and I've nothing to reproach you for, which makes it even harder to do what I'm doing.
Imagine giving everything to a scene and never walking off the set alive. In the golden age of cinema, danger wasn't just on screen. It was real. A stunt pilot pushing the limits of early aviation, a beautiful actress trapped in burning Victorian skirts, a comedy legend thrown from a horse, and a Thai action star falling from the sky. These actors died while filming their final shots, turning their movies into unintended memorials. Brace yourself for the chilling true stories behind Hollywood's most haunting on-set tragedies. Ormer Locklear. At first glance, the name Ormer Locklear doesn't exactly sound like someone who would end up rewriting the rules of aerial stunts. It sounds calm, almost ordinary, but the man behind the name was anything but that. Ormer Locklear lived for danger. He wasn't just a stunt pilot. He was one of the earliest daredevils to turn the sky into a stage. His journey started in the U.S. Army Air Service during World War I, where he trained as a pilot at a time when aviation itself was still new and unpredictable. Planes were fragile, experimental machines, and flying them required a certain kind of nerve. Ormer didn't just have that nerve, he leaned into it. When the war ended, he didn't walk away from flying. Instead, he took it to the public. He became a barnstormer, part of a traveling wave of pilots who turned flying into live entertainment. These shows weren't just performances, they were spectacles. Crowds gathered to watch pilots defy gravity in ways that seemed impossible, and Ormer quickly became the main attraction. People weren't just curious about him, they were obsessed. At the height of his popularity, he was earning up to $3,000 per show, an enormous amount of money for that time. What made him stand out wasn't just skill, it was innovation mixed with pure recklessness. Stories about him spread quickly, especially the one that explained how he supposedly invented wing walking. Mid-flight, his radiator cap came loose. Instead of landing to fix it, Ormer climbed out of the cockpit while the plane was still in motion and secured it himself, thousands of feet above the ground. That moment didn't just solve a problem, it created a whole new kind of stunt. And he kept pushing. He became known for pulling off things no one had ever attempted before. He performed mid-air transfers, moving from one flying plane to another as if it were just another step. He carried out the car-to-plane jump, boarding an aircraft directly from a moving car. Every stunt raised the stakes, and every success built his legend. If it involved speed, height, and risk, Ormer was usually the first one willing to try it. It didn't take long for Hollywood to notice. At the time, the film industry was always looking for something bigger, something audiences hadn't seen before. Ormer fit perfectly into that space. In 1919, he starred in The Great Air Robbery, playing an airmail pilot caught up in a battle against a criminal gang known as the Death's Head Squadron. On screen, he had the look of a classic leading man, even if it took a bit of makeup and styling to get him there. Behind the scenes, he was genuinely excited about this new chapter. During a press stop in Chicago, he spoke openly about how much he was enjoying the film world. It gave him something different, real connections, a sense of belonging, and a kind of happiness he hadn't expected to find. The film turned out to be a major success, but surprisingly, it didn't lead to a long partnership with Universal. The studio reportedly grew tired of his unpredictable behavior. There were stories about him flying too low over Los Angeles streets, treating the city like it was just another stage for his stunts. Whether those stories were exaggerated or not, the result was the same. Universal decided not to continue working with him. That could have been the end of his film career, but another opportunity came along. William Fox saw potential and offered him a new deal, casting him in a film called The Skywayman. This time, Ormer would play a pilot suffering from amnesia, pulled into a dangerous mission involving stolen jewels. At first, the studio planned to take a safer approach. Instead of risking real stunts, they wanted to rely on miniatures and controlled effects. It made sense. By then, Ormer's reputation wasn't just about talent, it was about risk. But for him, playing it safe defeated the entire purpose. He wasn't interested in pretending. He wanted the real thing, the same kind of danger that had made him famous in the first place. He pushed back until the studio finally gave in. Saul M. Wurtzel, who was overseeing the production, agreed to let him perform the stunts, but with one condition. The most dangerous sequence would be saved for the final day of filming. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the risk everyone understood, but didn't want to say out loud. That final day came on August 2nd, 1920. Now, the scene could have been filmed during the day and altered later to look like night. It would have been safer, simpler, and more controlled. But Ormer refused. He wanted authenticity, even if it meant increasing the danger. So that night, at around 10 p.m., he took off from the DeMille airfield. His wife, Viola, was there, along with friends, colleagues, and onlookers who had gathered to watch. With him in the plane was his assistant, Milton Elliott. They climbed to about 3,000 feet, and Ormer began performing under powerful spotlights that lit up the night sky. One stunt followed another, building toward the final sequence, the moment everything had been leading up to. For the climax, he sent the plane into a spinning nosedive. At the same time, magnesium flares attached to the wings ignited, creating a blazing, dramatic effect meant to light up the scene. It was dangerous, but it was exactly the kind of spectacle he was known for. There was a plan in place. As he descended, the spotlights were supposed to be turned off at a specific point. That signal would let him know exactly where he was in relation to the ground, allowing him to pull out of the dive safely. But something went wrong. The lights didn't go out. As the plane dropped lower and lower, the brightness from the spotlights stayed fixed on him. Blinded and disoriented, he lost his sense of distance. The aircraft he was flying, a Jenny made mostly of wood and canvas, offered almost no protection. Within seconds, the plane crashed into an oil well sump. The impact was catastrophic. Ormer Locklear and Milton Elliott were thrown from the aircraft and died instantly. He was just 28 years old. On the ground, the reaction was immediate and chaotic. Viola tried to run toward the crash site, but crew members held her back. The scene was too dangerous, too overwhelming. For her, the memory of that moment never faded. Even decades later, it remained vivid and painful, something that stayed with her long after the headlines disappeared. What made the tragedy even more unsettling was how close they had been to finishing. The film was essentially complete. That final stunt had been the last piece. But instead of shelving the project, the studio made a different decision. Fox chose to move forward with the release, using the intense public attention surrounding Ormer's death to promote the film. The tragedy became part of the story, drawing audiences driven by curiosity and shock. Martha Mansfield. Martha Mansfield was New York City to her core, but the name the world came to know her by was borrowed from a small Ohio town tied to her family roots. From a young age, she moved with purpose. As a teenager, she was already working, modeling for artists, dancing, performing wherever there was a stage. She wasn't waiting for opportunity to find her. She was chasing it down. By 1912, she had already stepped onto Broadway, appearing in productions like Little Women. It didn't take long before she caught the attention of Florenz Ziegfeld, one of the most influential figures in entertainment at the time. That opened the door to the Ziegfeld Follies of 1918, and later, the Midnight Frolic, placing her right in the middle of some of the most glamorous productions of that era. Her move into film happened just as quickly. In 1916, she signed with S&A Studios, where she began building her screen presence alongside Max Linder in a string of comedies. She adapted fast, and by 1918, she was already leading films like Broadway Bill. Just a couple of years later, in 1920, she reached a major milestone, starring opposite John Barrymore in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. From there, everything seemed to line up perfectly. For the next few years, Martha Mansfield was everywhere, appearing in major productions and steadily building momentum. She wasn't just working, she was rising. By late 1923, she was right on the edge of something bigger. That next step was supposed to come with The Warrens of Virginia, a large-scale silent film set during the American Civil War. It was more ambitious than anything she had done before, with a bigger budget, more attention, and the kind of exposure that could elevate her into the top tier of Hollywood stars. But the same attention to detail that made the film feel authentic also introduced a hidden danger. The production was committed to historical accuracy, which meant elaborate costumes that matched the mid-1800s setting. For Martha, that meant wearing heavy layered dresses designed in the style of the time. Her role was that of a woman caught in a divided world, deeply in love with a man who joins the Union Army while she remains tied to the Confederacy. It was a dramatic, emotional part, and visually, it came with those massive flowing dresses that defined the era. By November 1923, filming was almost complete. Martha had nearly finished her work. The end was in sight. Then came Thanksgiving Day, November 29. The weather that morning was overcast, perfect for the kind of lighting the director needed. Production had already fallen behind due to earlier delays, so there was pressure to take advantage of every available moment. The cast and crew were told that they would need to work through the morning before sitting down for their holiday meal. It wasn't an unreasonable request, at least on the surface. The scenes left to shoot were minor, just a few final touches. Most of the cast agreed without much pushback, expecting to wrap things up quickly. Martha arrived on set dressed in one of her full costumes, a large white hoop skirt layered with fabric, detailed with ruffles, and fastened high at the collar. It was the kind of outfit that looked stunning on camera, but came with very real weight and restriction. After a quick breakfast at the St. Anthony Hotel, where the cast was staying, she made her way to Brackenridge Park for the shoot. The location sat near what would later become the Lambert Beach softball fields. It was just another workday, one that was supposed to end with celebration. She completed her scenes without issue. Everything seemed to be moving exactly as planned. Then she stepped away to take a break. Her car was parked just a short distance from the set, and she walked over to it, likely expecting a quiet moment to rest after the morning's work. For a brief stretch of time, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then the silence shattered. Screams cut through the set, sharp and immediate. When people turned toward the sound, what they saw was almost impossible to process. Martha was running away from the car, her body completely engulfed in flames. For a split second, shock held people in place. Then a few individuals moved. Her chauffeur reacted first. Without hesitation, he rushed toward her, trying to tear away the burning fabric. The intensity of the fire made it nearly impossible. As he struggled, he suffered severe burns to his hands. At the same time, her co-star, Wilfred Lytell, stepped in. Thinking fast, he threw his overcoat over her, attempting to smother the flames. His actions made a difference. He managed to protect her face and neck from the fire, preventing even more devastating injuries. But the damage had already spread. After a desperate effort, they finally managed to extinguish the flames. What remained was devastating. Martha had suffered severe burns across most of her body. The only small mercy was that her face had been spared. She was rushed to the hospital immediately. By then, she was drifting in and out of consciousness, her condition critical. Doctors worked to stabilize her, treating the burns and trying to manage the trauma her body had endured. Despite everything, there was a brief window of hope. She showed signs of awareness, even managing to focus on something deeply personal, her appearance. In those moments, she expressed concern about whether her face had been affected, a reflection of both her career and the reality of the industry she was part of. Plans were made to move her back to the hotel for recovery, but her condition took a sudden turn. By noon the following day, November 30th, Martha Mansfield passed away at a hospital in San Antonio. She was just 24 years old. Her death left behind questions that were never fully answered. Because she never recovered enough to explain what happened, the exact cause of the fire remains uncertain. Two main possibilities have been discussed over the years. One points to a random accident. Witnesses claim to have seen a lit match thrown into the car, possibly by someone nearby, which then ignited her clothing. If that was the case, the person responsible was never identified. The other theory suggests the fire may have started inside the car itself, possibly from a cigarette or match. Smoking was common at the time, even on set. But those closest to Martha strongly rejected that idea. Her mother, in particular, insisted that she didn't smoke, saying it made her uncomfortable. In the end, the truth was never confirmed. What remained was the loss. A young actress on the brink of major success, taken in a moment that no one saw coming. After her passing, Her family made the long journey to bring her back home, closing a chapter that had once been filled with so much promise. Roy Kinnear. Born in Wigan in 1934, Roy Kinnear grew into one of those instantly recognizable faces, warm, familiar, and impossible to forget. Before Hollywood really embraced him, he had already carved out a strong reputation in British television comedy. Then came the film roles that made him iconic, appearances in Help, and his unforgettable turn as the overly soft, easily pushed around father of Veruca Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Even in animation, his presence carried weight. Fans of the 1978 Watership Down would recognize his voice as Pippin. By the time he stepped onto the set of The Return of the Musketeers, Roy was 54 years old and operating at full stride. Professionally, he was respected and reliable. Personally, he was grounded, a devoted husband to actress Carmel Crean and a father to 3 young children. From the outside, everything looked steady. But this particular film franchise had already built a quiet reputation behind the scenes, and not a good one. The earlier Musketeers productions had been chaotic, even dangerous. Injuries weren't rare. They were almost expected. Oliver Reed had landed in the hospital after a sword accident went wrong. Michael York, who played D'Artagnan, had come dangerously close to losing an eye during a fight sequence. It got so intense that York reportedly started tucking his script under his costume, using it like makeshift armor just to get through scenes. So by the time filming reached Spain for The Return of the Musketeers, there was already tension in the air. People knew what kind of set this could turn into if things weren't handled carefully. The stunt that would change everything didn't seem extreme on paper. The plan was straightforward. The Musketeers, along with Kinnear's character Planchet, would ride their horses across a bridge in Toledo and come to a sharp stop. Simple enough until reality stepped in. The bridge was covered in slick, uneven flagstones, and there was a steep drop on either side. The main actors took one look and refused outright. Even the stunt coordinator raised concerns, warning that the setup was unsafe. But despite those warnings, production moved forward. The cameras were going to roll. What made it worse was that Roy Kinnear wasn't even comfortable on horseback to begin with. Horse riding wasn't something he enjoyed or practiced regularly. He had made that clear to his wife before. He only got on a horse when the job absolutely demanded it. And here he was, being asked to perform a risky stunt under pressure. He was given just 15 minutes to prepare. When the director called action, the riders moved onto the bridge. For a moment, everything seemed to go according to plan. Then Kinnear's horse lost its footing on the slippery surface. In an instant, he was thrown violently to the ground. The fall left him with a severely broken pelvis. The situation turned tragic almost immediately. During most of the shoot, his wife and children had been close by, but they had recently returned to England. Now, instead of wrapping up a film, Roy was being rushed to Ruber International Hospital in Madrid. Carmel received the call and wasted no time flying back to Spain. When she arrived, something didn't sit right with her. The hospital felt off, quiet, understaffed, unsettling. She later described a deep sense of unease, like something was wrong beneath the surface. It wasn't just worry, it was instinct. At first, doctors seemed hopeful. They believed he could recover. But the reality was far more serious. Roy had already lost a significant amount of blood, 5 pints. His body was under immense strain. The following day, after being transferred to another clinic, his condition suddenly worsened. He suffered a heart attack. And just like that, Roy Kinnear was gone. The shock hit the production hard. Cast and crew were left trying to process what had just happened. Screenwriter George MacDonald Fraser later described the atmosphere as grim and heavy, remembering Roy as a lively, witty presence who had been taken far too soon. Then came a decision that split opinions across the board. After pausing briefly, the production chose to continue filming. For some, it felt like the only way to honor him. Michael York later explained that the decision had been unanimous among certain members of the team. They wanted to complete the film so that Roy's final performance wouldn't be lost. But not everyone saw it that way. Christopher Lee believed the entire project should have been shut down immediately. Richard Chamberlain reportedly felt anger over the choice to continue. To them, pushing forward felt wrong. Still, production resumed, and without modern CGI, they had to rely on practical solutions. A body double stepped in to complete Kinnear's remaining physical scenes. Later, a voice actor was brought in to replicate his speech for unfinished dialogue. The official stance from the production didn't sit well with everyone either. Just days after the tragedy, a spokesperson defended the decision to proceed with the stunt, insisting that no unreasonable risks had been taken and that safety had been a priority. For Carmel Kinnear, that explanation didn't come close to the truth. She was convinced that her husband's death could have been avoided. What followed was a long and painful legal battle that stretched out over years. The producers argued that the blame didn't lie with the stunt or the set conditions, but rather with the hospital's handling of his injuries. It became a fight over responsibility, one that dragged on long after the cameras had stopped rolling. Finally, in 1994, a ruling came down. Carmel was awarded £650,000 in compensation, with the Spanish production facility held accountable. On paper, it looked like justice, but standing outside that courtroom, it was clear that no amount of money could balance what had been lost. The years of grief, the absence, the life that had been cut short, none of that could be replaced. She made it known that the pain didn't end with the verdict. It was something the family would carry for decades. The impact of that day didn't stop with the Kinnear family. It rippled outward. Director Richard Lester, once known for his sharp, energetic filmmaking style, essentially stepped away from the industry. The incident marked a quiet end to his career. He rarely spoke about it afterward, refusing to revisit the film or the circumstances surrounding it. When asked, he kept his distance, leaving people to draw their own conclusions. Even years later, those who had been there couldn't fully shake it. Michael York reflected on the loss with a sense of unfinished meaning, expressing hope that Roy's death wouldn't be in vain, that it would at least push the industry towards safer practices, ensuring that no other actor would have to pay that kind of price for a scene. In the end, what remains isn't just the film or the controversy around it. It's the memory of a man who brought warmth, humor, and humanity to every role he touched, and whose life was cut short in a moment that never should have happened. Tyrone Power. For Tyrone Power, acting wasn't something he stumbled into, it was something he was born into. Performance ran deep in his family. His grandfather had built a name as a well-known Irish comedian, and his father carried that legacy forward as a respected stage and film actor. It was almost expected that Tyrone would follow the same path. And in a way, his journey into acting was marked by something deeply unsettling. As a young man, he traveled to Hollywood with his father, stepping into that world together. But that moment of transition turned tragic when his father collapsed and died of a heart attack after a long day on set. It was an early, painful introduction to both the industry and the pressures that came with it. Despite that, Tyrone Power built a career that proved he wasn't just riding on a family name. He had real range. He could step into historical roles like the outlaw in Jesse James, then shift into something more emotionally complex in adaptations like The Sun Also Rises. He even showed a darker edge in Witness for the Prosecution, playing a character wrapped in suspicion and tension. But no matter how much depth he brought to his roles, the industry had its own idea of who he was. Studios saw his looks first. That classic leading man appearance made him a natural fit for adventure films, and they leaned into it heavily. He became known for playing heroic sword-wielding characters in films like The Mark of Zorro and Captain from Castile. While those roles made him a star, they also boxed him in. He spent much of his career trying to break out of that image and be taken seriously as a dramatic actor. There's a harsh kind of irony in how his story ends. After years of trying to move beyond those action-heavy roles, his life would end in a way that felt pulled straight out of one of them, and eerily similar to his father's fate. By the time he began work on Solomon and Sheba, Tyrone Power still carried the presence of a leading man. He had grown a beard for the role, giving him a more rugged look, but the charm and confidence were still there. On the surface, he appeared strong, fully in control, but behind that image, the reality was very different. The production took him to Spain, where the demands of the film quickly piled up. This wasn't just another acting job. His own company was involved in producing the movie, which meant the responsibility didn't stop when the cameras did. He was carrying the weight of the project, both physically and mentally. Long hours, intense scenes, and the pressure of keeping everything on track began to take their toll. As filming continued, warning signs started to appear. He underwent a routine medical checkup, and what the doctor saw raised concern. There was enough there to recommend further testing, specifically another cardiogram. It wasn't a casual suggestion, it was a serious warning. But Tyrone chose not to follow through. He made it clear that he didn't want to know if something was wrong. It was a decision that, in hindsight, carried enormous weight. Not long after, the production moved into filming one of its more demanding sequences, a sword fight between his character and the one played by George Sanders. It was supposed to be a key moment in the film, full of tension and energy. But the scene didn't come together easily. Sanders wasn't particularly skilled with a sword, which meant the choreography kept breaking down. Take after take, they had to reset and start again. By the time they reached around the 20th attempt, exhaustion had clearly set in. What should have been a controlled performance was turning into a physical strain. Then, in the middle of the action, everything stopped. Tyrone Power suddenly collapsed. At first, there may have been a moment of confusion. On a film set, falls can be part of the performance, but it quickly became clear that this was something else entirely. The strain of the repeated duel had triggered a massive heart attack. The set fell into shock. People watched as one of Hollywood's biggest stars went from performing to fighting for his life in a matter of seconds. To make matters worse, there was no doctor on set. They moved as quickly as they could, rushing him to a hospital. But the delay mattered. By the time they arrived, there was nothing more that could be done. Tyrone Power was pronounced dead at the age of 44. The impact of his death rippled through the industry. It wasn't just the loss of a major star, it was the suddenness of it, the way it mirrored his father's fate, and the sense that it might have been prevented. He was laid to rest at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and the funeral drew those who had known him both personally and professionally. The mood was heavy, filled with the kind of grief that comes from losing someone too soon. Among those who spoke was his close friend, Cesar Romero, who reflected on the kind of man Tyrone had been, not just as an actor, but as a person. He remembered him as someone who carried both outward charm and inner warmth, someone whose presence would be deeply missed. Mr. Chaiyabancha didn't begin his journey in film. He earned his reputation first in the boxing ring. As a Thai boxing champion, he already had discipline, presence, and a natural physicality that set him apart. Add to that his striking looks, and it becomes clear why the film industry quickly took notice. By his early 20s, he had stepped in front of the camera, and from that point on, his rise was nothing short of explosive. What followed was a career that moved at an almost unbelievable pace. Between 1957 and 1970, Mr. appeared in 266 released films. That kind of workload meant he was constantly moving, often juggling multiple productions at once. Sets became his second home. While he explored different genres, including romance and musicals, it was his work in action-adventure films that truly defined him. He became more than just a popular actor. He became a cultural icon in Thailand, admired across the country, even earning recognition from royalty. His background in boxing played a major role in shaping his screen presence. He stayed in peak physical condition and took pride in performing his own stunts, bringing a level of authenticity that audiences could feel. That commitment to realism became part of his identity as a performer. By 1970, he was ready to take even more control over his career. He began work on Insi Thong, also known as Golden Eagle, a project that marked a major turning point. For the first time, he wasn't just the star, he was also the producer and director. It was a personal project, one that allowed him to shape the story from start to finish. The film also brought back one of his most beloved roles, Insi Deng, the Red Eagle. This masked vigilante had first appeared in a 1959 hit and had since become closely associated with Mr. himself. Audiences saw the character and the man as almost inseparable. There was a sense that this film would cement his legacy even further. As production moved toward its final day, everything seemed to be building toward a strong finish. That day came on October 8, 1970. The crew was preparing to shoot the final scene, a moment designed to leave a lasting impression. The concept was simple but dramatic. The Red Eagle would escape by grabbing onto a rope ladder hanging from a helicopter rising into the sky as the story came to a close. But once filming began, things didn't go as planned. The helicopter hovered higher than expected, and the rope ladder swung unpredictably in the air. When Meter reached for it, he was only able to grab the very bottom rung. There was no time to adjust, no stable footing. Before he could secure himself, the helicopter began to ascend. Suddenly, he was no longer performing a stunt under control. He was hanging in open air, held up only by his grip, with nothing beneath him but empty space. What made the situation even more dangerous was that the pilot didn't realize what was happening. From his perspective, the scene was unfolding as expected. He continued to climb, taking the helicopter higher and higher. Below, the reality was far different. Meter struggled to hold on, but the strain was overwhelming. There was no support, no safety mechanism to catch him. At a certain point, his strength gave out. He lost his grip and fell. The impact was fatal. The loss sent shockwaves through the Thai film industry. It wasn't just the death of a major star, it was the sudden, violent nature of it, happening in the middle of a film he had poured himself into. The timing made it even more painful. Just months earlier, the industry had already lost another key figure, director Ratana Pestonji, who had collapsed from a heart attack while passionately speaking about the future of Thai cinema. When Insi Thong was eventually released in 1974, the tragedy followed it. In its initial version, the footage of the accident was left in the film, creating a deeply unsettling experience for audiences. Later releases removed those moments, but the original cut remains a haunting reminder of what happened. In the days after his death, the response from the public made it clear just how much Meter had meant to people. Tens of thousands gathered in Bangkok for his cremation, filling the streets in a show of respect and grief. Even years later, a shrine near the site of the accident continues to draw visitors who come to honor his memory.